We move to item number 14, which is the recommendations from the Appointments, Performance Review and Value for Money Committee, and this relates solely to the Group Procurement Value for Money report. The other report will be subject to further workshopping. I'd like to welcome Sally Garrett and Kevin Ramsey to the table, and could I invite Councillor Desley Simpson to move the recommendation here? Yep. Moved by Councillor Simpson. I'll second it and invite Sally just to speak to the paper.
Yes, so the paper before you is recommendation, our Value for Money review recommendations on our procurement evaluation. I'll take the report largely as read. We do see this is a very significant opportunity, as you can see, by the value component of the report. The main comment, I suppose, in support is that with the long-term plan almost, signed and sealed and delivered, we're faced with a very, very complex and large capital program over the next 10 years, and the supply side implications of that, particularly for the group, are quite significant. And so this opportunity, particularly around converting the group procurement policy into an actionable strategy, is very timely, and so we feel that there is significant value in some of the recommendations we're making in light of the environment.
Great, thank you very much for that. I'll cut to the chase with the first question. You think that you talked about an actionable strategy. Once we action this, the potential savings in this area could be in excess of $140 million over the 10-year period?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's always good to capture. Right, questions first, Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's probably more a holistic comment. So the savings that we get, so there's been a lot of questions around what happens with the savings. So can you just tell what happens when we save, $140 million, what then happens to our books, and why aren't we reducing rates, or what is the kind of plan on the budgeted savings we look at over the 10-year process?
So through the Chair, recognising the $140 million is a net present value over the 10-year period, so it will take some time to implement that. But also, what I think you recognise is in the long-term plan, there were some targets built into those budgets. So what we have to find out is exactly which areas these are going to relate to. Primarily, it seems to be around the infrastructure areas. But once those savings are achieved, they may actually be to meet the budgeted forecast going forward. They may be reallocated. It depends on the nature of what they are and when they occur.
So basically we just do more within the 10-year period than we were able to before?
Well, that'll be a decision you've made. You've actually got a 10-year plan with a capital program and an operational outcomes to be achieved. The stated amounts of rates and debt are in that long-term plan as well to achieve those outcomes. This may be some amounts to help achieve some savings built into those long-term plan budgets. If they go beyond that, then there'll be a decision as to where you'd like those to be allocated.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Penny-Hulse.
Thank you. So just my first question, the recommendations are different to the ones in the report. So obviously we're just dealing with procurement. There's nothing on here around the Parks report, just to be reassured by that. So I've just got a couple of questions on the procurement, on the wider issue of procurement. And whilst you know my feelings on the 17A review process that I've probably got quite a lot of reservations about, I do see some value in the process. However, in reading the procurement report, I'm a little bit concerned that we are still missing the point around long-term costs that can be incurred by short-term savings. So Mr. Mayor, I'm very leery about our excited focus on savings through the 17A process. And, we've all got examples of where we've made short-term decisions, you know, and some of it might be in the refuse collection area, the recycling area, whatever. In an incredibly dynamic global environment, we need to be fleet of foot and quite open to the fact that we may need to spend more to secure an affordable future for our ratepayers. So whilst I'm very supportive of your drive for value for money, and I absolutely endorse that as something politically that you have said and you're following through on, and I'm very happy to work with you on that, I don't think we need to overpromise the quantum of savings from this procurement process, because I think it is potentially misleading and it shouldn't be the driver for this bit of work. So to my question. My question is, we've only got one page in here on sustainability, and I'm just wondering whether we've got any discussion of, understanding of, or thought around the whole circular economy issue, which is now driving our management of waste.
Waste. Yeah, sorry, the specific question in relation to this procurement.
So if we procure,
Yeah.
for instance, office furniture.
Yep.
So we go to some named chain group and buy a whole lot of plastic furniture that will end up in the landfill in 2 years' time. If we, however, are brave and we purchase something that has a secured circular economy component, i.e. it can be disassembled, reused, and has a whole value chain associated with it, are we looking at that as part of our procurement process?
Through the chair, if I can respond to that, we definitely are looking to that. So it's not always about the bottom line in terms of our procurement activity. We have a sustainable procurement framework that we've adopted for the council group, and across the group we're working on making sure that when we're going out to undertake any procurement activity, that we are looking at issues like sustainability, whether that's environmental, economic, social, etc., as part of the outcomes that we can deliver. So it's not always focused on the bottom line, and we will look to get as many bottom lines as we can out of that activity.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, the reason why I ask this, and I am, I know that this is something I've said many times, and you will get bored of me saying this, but I will keep saying this. We need to work out which policy has supremacy. So is the drive the 17A value for money? This is a discrete and distinct process in and of itself, and I respect that. That lives here, so we reference it and we think about it and we're cognizant of it. However, we have bigger policies and bigger levers that drive our policies of this council. So my question is, and I guess it's to you, how do we manage the kind of, we could save this amount of money if we took a blanket approach to 17A. However, are we brave enough to say, but we've got other drivers at play here, so they might not be delivered?
I think the short answer to that question is that the value for money, which is what we're seeking to secure, can be value in terms of lower costs, but it can be, if I use procurement as an example, the value that we get out of a social procurement policy that sees a whole lot of young people no longer not in employment, education or training, but being trained to develop the construction skills that they need. That is value for money. So value for money is deliberately a broader term. Of course we look at the bottom line, because each dollar we save is a dollar we can reinvest in another outcome that we're seeking for our community, but that value doesn't just have to be in the straight dollar terms. I think your example was a good one about the sustainability of what the product we're purchasing. Maybe we start to purchase products that don't impose environmental cost. That doesn't stop us doing some of the things here which are not so much about the outcome as is there a more effective and efficient way to procure that means that we can get this good, whether, you know, it might be a sustainable good and it might be a social procurement, because of the nature in which we bring together the economy of scale from a number of different units, and we increase our purchasing strengths. So it's not at the expense of those other things. It may in fact enhance those other things.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think that's the exact answer I wanted. Hence my concern about putting some sort of amount of money that is up front in this discussion and promising that those are the savings that will accrue to this. My political warning is that's an interesting byproduct of this process. It's not the entire outcome.
I think it goes to Councillor Hill's question before. What do you do with these savings? Well, actually, if you can work a more efficient way of getting a product at a cheaper price, you may convert that into changing the nature of the product that you're getting. So it's how you get the best value for money in the broader sense. Right, further questions? We've got Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm hearing completely what Councillor Hulse has just said and understand that. So is this the 70 days identified things that are just starting, or it's new, or is this a continuation of an ongoing process, I guess is my first question.
So we're looking at the potential value, you know, and we've looked at it from a forward focus, but always looking back in order to drive our assumptions on potential value.
If I could just add through the chair too, just to put this in that context, this is never reassessing strategies or policies that are in place. So be that a procurement policy, be that a waste minimisation and management plan, all of those are deemed to be in place. How is this now delivering on those? Are we delivering as effectively, as efficiently as we possibly can on those? So it's not going back and relitigating any plans, strategies or policies. So what it does mean, obviously, is that we are in existence. This council in itself for 8 years now, so we are at varying stages. So what this does do, which is what Sally's just said, is it does a current state. So how are we effectively delivering today? What potentially could we deliver like going forward in a future state? The difference between those two is what this is suggesting some opportunities exist. So what it's saying is we recommend that this organisation goes away and explores those opportunities, and based on benchmarking, that's where those dollar values have come up. It's assessed the level of return you'd normally expect for an organisation of this size with the procurement function it has. It suggests that's the sort of magnitude of dollars we potentially could save. So let's go away and find those actual actions that could deliver on it.
I think, excuse me, I completely understand and support that where it's a good idea to benchmark any sort of process in the business world. How well are you doing? What else can we do to smarten up the process? I guess the point I'd make that there's already been quite a bit of work done. We've identified $32 million in benefits so far up to second quarter. We've got 70 million for the year. We need to find how the rest of that's going. I'd like a comment on that from Jazz going forward, but also well aware of things like legal services, electricity, SAP services. There's already been a considerable amount of work done for cost benefits to the council.
Through the chair, if I can respond, absolutely. So the recommendations are really building on the activity that we've already done. In my view, we've never had the level of collaboration across the council group that we've got today. The group procurement policy and the sustainable framework are an example of us all working together to agree high-level principles of how we'll work together. Electricity procurement that you mentioned, for example, delivering hard OPEX savings off our bottom line across the group, and it's in the millions of dollars. So we have examples of how we're working together, and really the recommendations are more building on those and you know, looking at, again, in the next 10 years of the LTP, how do we make sure we're as effective and efficient as possible?
Great. So we have some good foundations. This is about putting the bricks up higher, which is a good news story. That 32 that's been already accounted for, Jazz, as far as benefits concerned, the question is asked here in the report about for the rest of the year, Q3, Q4, the other 38, how's that tracking? Have you got anything identified for that?
So we're tracking quite well. That's just the council parent target.
Yep.
Across the group, we're tracking really well. Auckland Transport's already confirmed benefits in excess of 40 million as well. So we'll be reporting that back up to the committee in August. But so far, yeah, we're over 54 million in benefits confirmed, and of course, lots of activity happens in the last month.
Right. So just to reaffirm, that's going back through strategic procurement now that we have that 3-year work program in place, and reporting back on the benefits and gains as we go forward to the work program.
Correct, and it will be split up and identified as what hard OPEX savings we've achieved as well.
Thank you.
I think that's a very useful answer, a very useful question. Councillor Newman.
Yeah, a couple of questions from me, both about procurement and about the report itself. So, where does social procurement and local procurement opportunities come into this? I mean, I would have thought that, look at, for example, TSI, there'd be all sorts of opportunities for social procurement pathways which don't, it's not a zero-sum game in terms of dollar value. There are wider wider opportunities beyond that. So how does this reflect that aspiration?
So through the chair, again, the strategy, the procurement strategy identifies all of those. It does talk about social, it talks about environmental, it talks about Te Māori and how those are actually going to be achieved. What this is then saying is, are we effectively delivering those outcomes we're seeking? So any individual procurement will take those into consideration. Jazz and the team have a very strong procurement plan basis leading to supply recommendations, which actually covers all of those aspects. How are we weighting the actual outcomes we're trying to achieve through a procurement? This isn't going in and trying to second-guess individual procurements like that, and it's not second-guessing the strategy that leads it. What it's doing is saying, on an overall basis, are we doing that effectively? Is it achieving those outcomes we're trying to achieve?
With respect to you're sort of reflecting all of government procurement arrangements to be used, but there may be other opportunities, and you're looking at organisations within the council family. I wonder if you have overcooked some of these. If you look at, for example, the external legal services, I could understand why Auckland Transport and Watercare would want to have their own external legal services, because actually they are applicants for a consenting process, whereas we are the regulators. So how does that, I mean, where do you reconcile fundamental difference in approach?
So at this point in our evaluation, we're looking at opportunities, and these opportunities need to be evaluated. The devil's in the detail, clearly. So all we are doing is a very strategic review of the categories and the potential for value to be obtained in certain categories across the group, and identifying what the range potentially of value could be. It's now up to the business to take these ideas and test them. And so in relation to legal, you may well be right. When there is a detailed evaluation of requirements, it may be that those requirements are very different across the group and don't warrant effectively a sharing or a combination of contracts.
Ms. Garrett, can I ask another couple of questions, if I may, with your indulgence, Chair? How does this, I mean, have you talked to NZTA and KiwiRail, both of whom will be significant suppliers of services, I presume, as part of the rollout of the CAPEX program for ATAP?
We haven't talked to them directly, no. We've been talking to Auckland Transport. Through them, we've been identifying effectively these group categories.
Is moving forward, is Auckland Transport going to be the negotiator of group procurement with NZTA and KiwiRail, or is it going to be Auckland Council? How is that relationship going to work?
Yeah, if I can just respond through the chair, the first recommendation is actually stating, have we on a conscious basis identified which groups should actually be done on a group basis versus individual, and what will drive that? What we're very aware of is that in some cases it's done on an individual procurement by procurement basis. What we should be doing is assessing what are the types of expenditure, the categories that we have, which ones would benefit from a group approach. So that's the very first recommendation, is on a conscious basis we've identified this category would be better on a group basis. Some would definitely still be on an individual basis based on the specialisation and expertise.
My final question actually relates to the report itself, item 14. Now, I understand that we're only dealing with group procurement today. Although we're only dealing with group procurement in terms of debate and resolution, the report omits the Parks and Open Spaces 17A review report. I don't know why that report has been omitted. It's very important in terms of what was actually considered at the 7th of June Appointments Committee meeting. It talks about a major sell down of Parks and Open Space. Why has that been excluded?
I can answer that. I took that out with the concurrence, I think, of all of the members of the Appointments and Performance Review and Value for Money Committee, because we thought that we needed to workshop some of those issues through before we were anywhere near getting to the point of being able to adopt its recommendations. So everyone around this table can be involved in the process, talk about the concepts, ask the questions in an environment where it's still being shaped. I did not want a report presenting what looked like a fait accompli to the committee before we'd worked through it in detail. That's just good process.
Sorry, Your Worship. I accept that we don't have to be debating the recommendations around that, but my view is that a report, and my reading of the Lagoima, says that a report that was publicly available at a committee that contains information, however controversial, around the sell down of parks and open space, if that report has been attached and released as part of a committee agenda and then is subsequently reported, even if we're not having a debate on it, it should be included. And I understand that this could be excluded by the Chief Executive if the matter was to be discussed in a publicly excluded environment, but that's not the case. I understand it's been publicly made available, and therefore it should have been attached as information to this report, even if we weren't going to have a debate on it.
We will have a debate on it, and the purpose of taking it out of this report is so we can have that debate in a workshop environment where questions can be asked in detail and explanations given, and councillors can all have their full say. But the document is, you're quite correct, is in the public arena now. But it is subject to a workshop process before we make any decisions on its recommendations. And I felt, and the committee felt, that was the appropriate way to deal with it. That was, I think, unanimous at the committee.
Need to be worked up more.
Okay. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up maybe a little bit on what's already been asked, but just around the sustainability arrangements. I know you talk about a framework in this. So I wonder if there be any, can we see the framework? What are the outcomes? Are there specific targets? I know that the examples used are working with Te Wakanga more on a pilot, engaging SMEs that are Māori in the procurement, but I was wondering if there are targets that are set quite specifically around maybe the TSI area, perhaps the Western initiative that will be up and running soon, youth and local procurement. So I'm keen to see what those targets might be, if there are targets.
So through the Chair, we haven't set targets through the framework yet. It is publicly available. It's on our website as well, and I'm happy to forward you a copy of that after the meeting. What we do is we set targets through the individual procurement activity that we do. And so, for example, we'll set targets around engagement of NEETs, if possible, and around reduction in carbon, etc., etc. So while we don't mandate what that should look like in each procurement activity, when it is conducted, we will measure it and report against it. So we haven't done a report against our activity for the last financial year, but we'll hope to bring that to the Procurement Committee agenda soon, and it should be available to all councillors.
Thanks. And just to follow up,
Yeah, please.
so, and when you'll report back on them, you'll give an overview of how many what the social kind of targets were and outcomes were, so we get a general outlay of where we've been able to achieve some of these social procurement measures?
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We come now for comments. It may be that we included some of our comments in our questions, but if there are any comments, Councillor Simpson.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Look, as you are very aware, I'm a great fan of this. I mean, we aim to be efficient at what we do, but without doubt we can do better regarding procurement, as the 17A review shows. We're talking big amounts of money here, $8.1 million annually to procure $2.9 billion worth of goods and services, working with approximately 10,000 suppliers. But there is double up and duplication that can be eliminated with better planning and working better across our council family. The report talks about the fact that we have a policy from September, but it's yet to result in the development of a group strategy, or more importantly, changes to the way procurement is undertaken across the group. This means that parts of our business can be in the market at the same time for the same products, therefore that increases costs. So obviously significant value will be delivered from improving that and with leveraging with key suppliers especially, and the duplication eliminated. Look, there are some quick wins in this report that will take less than 6 months to complete. I totally agree with the report that these should be immediately evaluated by management, Mr. Town, and potentially implemented as part of your business as usual work program. Value for money is about the best way, not necessarily the cheapest way. But we have to realise that this review also identifies $197 million worth of incremental hard savings, noted in page 146 of the report, 197 million of incremental hard savings, which is discounted down to 150 million net in the current value. $197 million worth of hard savings is the total budget in the Urban Road Safety Program for intersection upgrades on our highest risk urban roads in the next 10 years. So it's worth looking at. Councillors, I urge you to support this set of efficiencies around group procurement to show that we're doing all we can to deliver value for money for the residents and ratepayers of Auckland. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. If there are no further comments, I'm going to put the recommendations. The recommendations receive the group procurement value for money review and endorse the recommendations contained in the group procurement value for money review. They're on pages 95 and 96 of our document. They're all listed there in front of you to read. Put the resolution. All those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Declare it carried.